but now everybody knows. Got to keep.
You don't have to be retired to receive tax-free income. The problem is the vehicles that we've been conditioned to believe to help get us there were never designed to produce income.
Got to keep going. What you want to be going, you will see. It's your destiny, be in harmony. We were never meant to be apart. What you want to be going, you will see. You can have everything you want. It's your destiny, be in harmony. Ooh.
If you had a machine in your garage and all you had to do was put a quarter in it and it printed out $100. A quarter in it, printed out $100. Would you ever stop that machine from running?
But now everybody knows.
So what if you use that job that you hate as leverage to fill your machine so they can create income for you, so you don't have to worry about income?
We know where the world is gonna go. But now everybody knows that you can't stop for too long. Got to keep going.
Oh, we didn't finish the song. We were still grooving. Well, welcome everyone. Get in here. If you tuned in last time, you know that we talked about how the big corporations are taking over the real estate industry. But the bigger question is why. Tonight, we're going to look at what the landscape looked like back in the past, what it currently looks like, and what it will look like in the future. This will help you understand why this corporate interest is gaining speed. In addition, we're going to talk about how you can take control of your financial future by building a family bank. This isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving in today's economy and securing your legacy for generations to come. Now, I want to start with the upset that we've been seeing all over the interwebs. It's the boomer versus pretty much everybody else. And it's that conversation that we're going to talk about to start with, because it's an important one. Boomers often say that millennials and Gen Z are just complaining and not working hard enough to achieve the American dream. But is it really that simple? Donnell, why don't you share some light on why younger generations are finding it so much harder to buy homes and build wealth compared to boomers?
Well, yeah, and I will. But before I do that, though, I very rarely talk about how excited I am for Live, but I am pretty excited for this one. And it's really less about what we're about to share. This is one of those lives where if it was up to me, there'd be about 10,000 people on this live, because there are so many, I think, nuggets or gifts that are going to be given during this live that, I think if the objective is to understand what we need to do or how we can go about doing it, I think this is one of those lives to do that. So I'm excited about that part. But part of the reason, I think a few of the reasons why things are headed down the direction that they are is mainly because of, I like to call it, structure. We've been conditioned to believe a certain way and understand that certain institutions and the government has our back, and if we just continue following down the path that has been laid before us, we'll continue to be just as successful. Can't get that word out. Just as successful as those who have come before us. But the truth is, the path they walk is very different from the one that we're walking, and it's going to be very different for the one that we're kind of laying for the generations to come. And I think we have to kind of take this, look at it from the perspective of what can we do different so that the generations after us can be successful. And I think there's not enough conversation about that. There's a lot of conversation about the house is on fire, but no one's talking about how to put it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's easy to see that the house is on fire, right? It's easy for people to point it out. And I don't think that people are wrong for pointing it out. For some people, their job was to call 911 and say, there's a problem, right? Even if I don't have solutions, I can still point out that solutions need to be found. And that's exactly what you're going to find in this stream. So if you are tired of having this conversation with boomers, if you're a boomer and you are tired of having this conversation with millennials, and you want to be able to peel back some of the layers and understand why this argument exists in the first place, maybe gain a different perspective, or arm yourself with some clapbacks. This is the one for you, because you will be educated by the time this stream ends, not only with what exactly the problem is, why it exists, but what to do about it, which is, like you were saying, the most important part. So I'm excited. You ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, wait, hold on. I got to make sure our fun thing's on here because I might have taken it off. Ooh, that was close. It was close, guys. Here we go.
So inflation. And again, we started this stream off kind of mentioning, hey, this is a continuation of what we've all already kind of discussed. So we're going to dig into what's kind of impacting the or redefining the American dream and how inflation is impacting that. But if you remember, I was about to say last week. I guess it wasn't last week. It was Sunday. Sunday, what we kind of discussed was, and I'll zoom in. But Sunday, what we talked about was how corporate landlords are kind of taking over. Corporate landlords are impacting our ability to be able to buy a home. And so what we laid out was, you know what? There are some actions that we can take to become them. Well, specifically, though, this problem is not going away. There are a couple of companies out there that are buying up everything. And the impact of our I'll call it inability of being able to participate and not having leverage or the freedom to be able to buy a home just because we need it or get into those entry level homes because corporations are buying them up. It's impacting our ability to just survive. And so, but again, what do we do? And what we talked about on Sunday was if you get properly structured and leverage some of the tools you have available to you, like a self-directed retirement account or a cash value life insurance-based product, then maybe you can, help yourself in trying to become like these corporate institutions that are buying up things and put yourself in a better position to do the same. But I think one of the things that's not really talked about is what this seems to be causing or what seems to be happening as a result of this, the impact on inflation and where things are headed is it's created some sort of, I'll call it class war. And it's almost like those who came before, I think my generation are saying, hey, well, back in my day when eggs were 15 cents, I had to struggle to be able to survive. Why can't you do the same? And then it's the generation who's kind of going into this going, but it's different today. And it seems to be creating this, I'll call it this infighting versus what's the root? Like, what is the root of this problem? This right here is one of the roots of the problem. Why not address the root or at least position ourselves to become like these corporations and these entities that are buying up things versus infighting with each other? And I think that's where, if it's all right with you, sweetheart, we can kind of slide into this video that we wanted to share, or if you had something to mention around this subject as well.
Before we can even slide into the video, if this isn't anywhere else and it's just here, then I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
This right here is the reason why corporations are sweeping up all over the nation, all of this real estate. They forecast that as long as they're owning, people need somewhere to live, right? And in order for them, if they can't become homeowners, then they're going to have to be renters. So if they can create these monopolies in many different states across the country, they hold the power on how much they can profit. There's corporations who have owned real estate and owned property for various reasons, right? Like this isn't a new thing,
Right.
but at this scale, it is a new thing. What we cannot do is ignore it. We can't just complain about interest rates or property home price of property values or homes. We cannot just complain about what the landscape looks like today. We have to get proactive in preparing ourselves for the future, because why we're just complaining and why we're all distracted by all these other things that are happening out there, trying to have the conversation of, is it better to own or is it better to rent? I hope you're paying attention. If this is something that you've asked yourself or you have decided that owning a home isn't right for you, that why would I do that? You might change your mind. I hope you change your mind after this, matter of fact, especially if you plan on having kids. You really need to pay attention. So let's see, we grabbed this video because we thought that he broke it down so well, and we're all about giving people credit for where credit is due. He's going to go through it really fast, but I promise you we will we'll break it down after we're done here. So hold on one second.
the minimum wage was $1.40. That is $224 a month. However, the average apartment was only $108. So for 48% of your check, you could get an apartment. Fast forward to 2024, the federal minimum wage is $7.25, which is $1,160 a month, but the average apartment is $1,700. You cannot even afford an apartment today. In fact, if you make twice the minimum wage, you cannot afford an apartment in 2024. If you want to know what it was like growing up in 1970, the average apartment today should be $556. Millennials and Gen Zers, can you imagine how incredible life would be if rent was only $556? But let's look back to 1970 at the median household income. It was $8,700 and the median house price was just $17,000. So just 2 times the yearly salary. Fast forward to today, median household income, $85,000, median house, $400,000. That is 4.7 times. If you want to know what it was like in 1970, the average house today should be $170,000, which is fair, which would help everyone get into a house and the American dream would still be alive. So yes, things are always difficult for every generation, but it is significantly harder for millennials and Gen Zers. So boomers, let's stop beefing with each other and let's see how we can help the millennials and Gen Zers have a bright future.
Okay. All right. So let's, yeah, that's a fire hose, right? But this is why we have to be able to have this conversation. For one, we're not arguing the same thing. A lot of the boomers are arguing work ethic, right? They're arguing budgeting and habits and lifestyle choices and the differences there. They are not arguing the landscape and how different it looks. Now, millennials don't understand the landscape and how different it looks. So they're just going, yes, I'm not doing anything different. Yes, I get there's new tech. Yes, I get there's Netflix and things like that you didn't have access to when you were my age and just getting started. But that doesn't matter. Everybody has access to this, and I make a significant amount more than you did. So how is this still so hard? They haven't been able to see this math, and so therefore the arguments aren't even fair. There's just a lot of grandstanding, like I will die on this hill type of thing, but I don't really know why. It's just that I'm programmed to believe, one, this is possible for me, and two, this is possible for you, right? So on both sides, they're going, this is the American dream. You should be able to achieve it, but why this is so difficult is imperative to know. So let's break it down. You ready?
Yep. So, you're gonna jumping out, so I'll make it bigger.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So again, went over a lot, went very fast. I just want to make sure this part is clear. And it's the video is based off a comment that was basically made. It was something like this: hey, back in my day, things were tough for me too, because I only made $140. Minimum wage was only $140. Minimum wage was only $1.40. So because minimum wage was $1.40, I struggled as well to be able to get into my first home. So what's wrong with you? What's wrong with this generation? And why can't this generation be more successful? When it's not an apples to apples discussion. Because even though minimum wage has jumped up, 5 times? The truth is, the cost of being able to just rent has not jumped up just 5 times. It's jumped up considerably more than that. And here's the thing, I don't want to restate what he's already stated. Imagine this, I'll call it continuation of how things have been going. Imagine inflation continues on the same trajectory that it's currently on. What does that look like later on? And you might be saying to yourself, 2078, that's 54 years. Why do I care about 54 years? Well, imagine this is you, but what you're doing is you're setting up you're setting up the next generation to deal with this. If we don't do something different.
You're the boomer right now to that generation. Exactly.
And so the trajectory that we're on, if you think 146% of your income is a problem, what about 438%? And maybe 54 years is too far. Let's back up a little bit. Instead of looking 54 years away, what does it look like 20 years from now? And again, if minimum wage jumped up, 5 times, the average cost to get into an apartment to be able to rent jumped up 16 times. So if we continue down this path, in 20 years, by 2044, we'll be talking about rents around $5,700 just as an entry level. Is that sustainable? And again, from what irritates me about this video is there's a lot of infighting going on, meaning we're not saying why is this happening? Who's causing this? It's, you know what? If I did it, you can do it. And again, it's not an apples to apples discussion. And if we don't pay attention, if we don't do something different, this is what we're setting up the next generation for. And they don't see it coming. They have no reference. Because think about it. When you were here, or if you have family members who were here, if you would have been told then, or if they would have been told then that, you know what, in 2024, the cost of grandma's home or great grandma's home that was $17,000 to get in would look like something different, significantly different, about 146% different in 2024. Would you have believed them?
Well, hold on, because go
Go ahead.
back, because one thing we didn't talk about was why right here, why lenders even use this 40% debt to income ratio
Right.
today. Well, where did this come from? In 1970, I'll come over here. In 1970, this is when all of these traditional retirement vehicles were created. So doesn't this make a lot more sense where $1 million in your retirement account, this is still the goal, right? But you can see where it's so flawed. Why has this not been addressed yet? Or why hasn't the economy and all of the surrounding factors been addressed so that it can continue to keep this promise? They're just not talking about it.
Right.
We have to start talking about it because we can't wait for it to become important to them. The ones who are in the positions to make the decisions that will impact everyone are well taken care of. This is not a fear for them. It doesn't matter to them. So the point that why I wanted to I guess it's over here, why I wanted to bring this up is because if we're still in lending for a home today, you are still based off of a percentage close to 1970s for debt to income ratio. This is why, because a home just to rent was 48% of your income, not 146 of the minimum wage, right? Okay, now you can go forward into home prices.
Right. And so when you look at you're staying over here with me, right?
Yeah, I'll stay over here.
And when you look at the median household income, yeah, it's jumped up 10%, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But the medium home prices have not just jumped up that same percentage. We're
Right.
talking, I think this is somewhere around 24% difference, meaning from where it was to where it is. So again, can you imagine in 1970 sitting in grandma's home going, you know what? At some point, this home is going to be worth $400,000. And in order for you to be able to get in it, you're going to need to make $85,000. Like it's hard to even conceptualize, right? But that's what we're saying here. In another 54 years, what we're looking at is median income needing to be somewhere around 400 median
Right.
income needing to be somewhere around $420,000 a year. And just to get into an entry level home,
The average.
the math doesn't math. Like there's no way this can be realistic. So here's my take on it. Because meaning I can't stand by these numbers. This is just what the math is saying.
Yeah, if it followed inflation or if
Right.
it followed
If it just
increase
simply
at the same
followed the
rate.
trajectory that we're currently on, this is what it would look like. I cannot stand by these numbers, but I think we can all agree to this. It won't be this number. It won't be this number. So
Yeah.
it will be somewhere in between here and here.
Well,
So
I want to ask everybody
it's a problem.
who's watching, do you agree with these numbers? Do you see, or is this all new and you're just trying to soak it in? Like, give us your
it's a lot.
feedback.
It's a lot.
Is this something where you look at these numbers and you go, oh, they're just making stuff up? Or if you went to the inflation calculator, you tried to do a forecast yourself, would you end up with some numbers in between here and there? And regardless, do you still see it as problematic or no problem? Like, I love the feedback.
And again, at a minimum, I think we can agree it will be something more than this number.
Right.
And anywhere close to $4.6 million for you to be able to get for the median price of a home, let's call it half that.
Yeah.
That's
Still,
a problem.
Yeah. But the other thing to point out here is that 85,000 is the median household income now. But if you were to just follow inflation, it should be 70.
Right.
So there's so many things that are not following the rate of inflation. And if we take a look at that and we say, okay, if this is going to continue following the rate of inflation, then the median household income will be $419,000 by 2078. But it won't if it continues at the same rate. It will have to be more because you'll have to be qualifying for your lifestyle. Like cost of living will just be so astronomical. Now, when you're looking at these numbers, you're going, yeah, right. I could not even imagine this being the median, like middle America, just average income. But think about it, in 1970, they could not fathom that the median income would be $85,000.
Right. That's the part. That's the part.
So that's why how you're feeling right now about these numbers is how they were feeling about these numbers. And what you're thinking about, yeah, I could make it off of 85,000 if I had to. I could make that work for my income for this year. So the next generations to come, when you're looking at them and you're going, I made it work off of 85,000. How are you not making it work off of $419,000 a year?
Or 350.
Yeah,
right. 350, but you
Right.
need 419 or 420.
Yeah.
Right?
So this conversation is going to, this battle is going to continue when millennials end up being the boomers for that generation, whatever they're called. Gen, Alpha, Beta, whatever.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. What I both like and hate about this video is it feels like a distraction to me. Meaning this generation saying, why don't you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Is a distraction from, wait a minute. What is the actual problem and what is a viable solution for us to go after? Because here's where we're headed. We're either headed towards a civil war, because to me, this is not sustainable.
Right.
So either we're headed for a civil war, or there are some other actions that have to come out of this, whether it's government assisted or we as a people need to take a different approach.
Let me ask you this real quick, because Sequia said it in the chat, and I'm
I
going to bring
saw
it
it,
up.
and
Yeah.
please share it. Like, put it up there. That's fine.
Yeah, we're
Because
gonna.
I agree with it, because there is a reason, and I know the reason.
Yeah, let me go find it, because here
I
it
got
is,
it.
right
It's
here.
sitting right here. Yeah.
Yeah. She says, I love the fact that he was smart enough to leave Gen X alone. We don't bother anyone. We don't want anyone bothering us.
Here's the
Well-
thing about that, though, because I am Gen X. Here's the problem with that. I've got 4 that I would love to kick out of my house right now. Like, if you gave me the option, I would love to let them hit that door and go figure it out. But here's
Tough
what I
love.
know. Here's what I know. It's not realistic. That is not a realistic action. The best thing that we can do is put them in a position so that they can be successful, which means we have to do this differently. We have to look at, we are the generation coming up with multi-generational living, right? Because we
Right.
are in the midst of it. So it's not that I left Gen X alone. It's that we are the ones that are trying to identify a solution. It's the ones above us that are going, they don't need a solution, just kick them out.
Right. And the ones below that are saying, we're trying and we don't know what solutions are.
Right.
Yeah, because they're already, it's hard to learn how to swim when you are just trying to keep your head above water. It's far easier to learn how to swim when you feel like you're in a safe environment and you have the support in case something were to happen. Then you can go out in deeper water and be just fine. But when you can't touch the ground, and this will hit home for you, Donna, and I understand that it's not a very good analogy around here, but the
Call
point,
me old.
no,
Oh.
it's about swimming. The point is, the point is that it's really hard to even believe that you can swim. And so therefore you just go, well, I better learn how to doggy paddle better, right? I better try to find something to hold on to, a buoy, and that better be my goal so that I can just survive or feel like I'm thriving. Let me turn over and let me just see if I can float. But it's not actual swimming. So that's why I bring this up, because what you're saying essentially is, regardless of how serious they're taking it, that they need to learn how to swim. Like, this is not just about survival, it's also about thriving and being able to swim further. We have to keep them in the kiddie pool and continue these exercises versus, to your point, we are programmed to have this jarring experience of just throw them out there. They'll figure out how to
Figure it
swim.
out. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So we're not talking about that tonight. We're not talking about coddling anybody either. So that's not you're not going to find that here. We just first have to peel back the layers on these conversations so that we can understand what it is, why it exists, so we can continue these conversations in our own homes, right? And we can start to structure ourselves to be able to be resilient in whatever comes in the times ahead. The biggest thing I think that we can contribute to the world through YouTube, through wherever you're watching this at, I think is just helping people understand how to take control, the control that they do have access to, because a lot of the times we don't know what we don't know, and then why they need to understand where that control exists and how to put themselves in a position to pivot when they need to. You can't, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, I think is the point that I'm trying to make. And there's a reason why people are getting ready. There's a reason why people understand that they have to have control, and instead of waiting for the consequences or someone else to determine what is possible for us, we get to decide that today, as long as we understand how to get structured and where our leverage is. And that's a big topic around here for us, but we really focus on control. But there's one more thing that we focus on more than anything else, more than debt reduction or anything else, because it's the most important thing.
And
I thought I said it. I set it up. Set it up for you.
go ahead.
It's income.
Income. Ultimately meaning, and here's what I love about this visual. Yesterday's prices are not today's prices.
Right.
And tomorrow's prices will be nowhere close to where today's prices are, meaning that $85,000 a year, being the median income right around this space. I think we can all agree that as we continue down this path, today's prices will not be tomorrow's prices. So what action do you take? What do you do? Like, again, how do we make this easier? And what I both love and hate about that video is, again, I believe it's a distraction, because it's a distraction from us actually peeling back the layers and trying to understand what's the root and what actions do we take, versus it feels like we're infighting. It feels like we're just pointing a finger at each other. And again, I go back to, if you need $120,000 to be successful in 2020, in 2040, it's almost double that. What are you doing right now to be able to put yourself in a position to be able to accomplish that? Or what are you doing right now to make sure there are vehicles in place so that the generations after you will have the ability to be able to be successful in that environment? And so it goes back to, or starts with, I guess, not necessarily go back to, what's the goal? Like, what's the point? What's the purpose? And as it relates to that video, what I loved is the last sentence. Let's stop beefing with one another, and let's show these generations what the actions need to be. And why do I even mention that? We kind of said this on Sunday, and we also said it the Wednesday before. And that was, we are in the midst of the largest transfer of wealth this country has ever seen. What does that mean? That means that there's approximately $84 trillion in assets that will be passed on between here and here, meaning within the next 20 years, there will be approximately $84 trillion in assets transferred between us, meaning the boomers and the silent generation, they can't take it with them. So it's coming somewhere. And if we're not structured properly, if we're not, I'll call it, putting ourselves in a position to be able to either receive these assets or having these conversations with those who have the assets and going, you know what? Corporations are coming after your assets because they know you can't take it with you. Are we putting ourselves in a position to be able to have that discussion? And here's the other piece. Of this $84 trillion, 72 trillion of it is going to heirs, meaning 72 trillion of that 84 is coming to us. Are we structured to be able to handle it? Do those who are going to be transferring it to us even have the proper structure in place so that we receive it effectively? Or are they just giving us a tax burden? So again, these are discussions that we need to be having. And it goes back to, if the goal is to make sure this generation can successfully be able to handle whatever inflation looks like, what are the actions we're taking to be able to put us there? And I put this here for a reason. We talk heavily on this channel. These institutions care nothing about you.
Nor are they tied to your outcome.
Exactly. So the best thing that we can do is understand what they're doing, understand what these corporations are doing to be able to buy up all of these assets and become them. Put ourselves in a position to be the bank. Put ourselves in a position to be that financial institution. Put ourselves in a position so that we can leverage cash value life insurance just like the life insurance companies do. And so it brings us to our example for today.
Oh, okay.
And are we okay?
Yeah, well, I was going to say something, but
We'll say something, sweetheart. Let's do it.
It's not just putting ourselves in the position or those other. It's hard sometimes for people to say, why should I care? And if this is the income, by the way, if you were to be making the same exact income, having the same purchasing
120 in
power,
2024 is a $392,000 need in 2064.
yeah, and same thing for 1974. If you were making $28,000 a year in 1974, you had about the same purchasing power. If we're just going off of like inflation rates, right? The issue is, what would your life look like? How could it be different if in 1974 your parent, grandparent had thought about you? They weren't thinking about 50 years from now, who's going to be there and what their life was going to look like. They were thinking about themselves, right? And then, of course, every generation starts at square one and they get to do the same thing that they did and look at what they were able to make, right? That's the mindset. We have to stop doing that because it's not the same. But they have passed that to Gen X, and Gen X have passed that to millennials, right? So then millennials are raising kids now going, hey, everybody starts at square one and then you get to build a life for yourself, right? Go to college. Like, it's the same programming, but with the same assumptions. But how would your life look different if you could just for one moment, like an exercise, just imagine, close your eyes if you need to, and imagine if your grandparents in the 60s, whenever they were born, were adulting and starting the family, right? If they would have thought about you when you would be at your age, your current age now, or if they would have thought about how to prepare you and propel you when you were just leaving the home to start adulting and to start like the platform that you would launch from. For some people, they were thought of. This was wealthy families. These are trust fund babies. These are all of the, we throw these terms out like, oh, they're a trust fund baby. Like, of course they had, right? They didn't have it like this. But the only difference between them and the majority of us who weren't trust fund babies was just that somebody had put these things in place. They may have had access to the same assets or the same amount of income. We don't know. They could have just been structured differently, which is the whole point of why we're going over this. Because it could have been very possible that it could have been that they had access to the same amount of money. Structured differently produces a different result that goes beyond one or two generations, right? So that's why I wanted to say, if you see something like this and you're going, wow, okay, well, that's interesting information. That's not why I'm sharing it. I'm sharing it to show that right now you are at the top of this, right? That's where, but imagine if we just moved it all up and went down generations. That's why we are including the generations and decades beyond, because that's where we are right now. And we are kids, right? Gen Z, for instance. So how do we get structured? How do we do this differently so that we can do it right this time?
And again, so kind of leading into the example. So what I wanted to do was just kind of highlight a conversation that I had with a client of mine. Matter of fact, he had reached out because he had already created his self-directed 401k, and the issue was, hey, he's wanting to be able to take advantage of MPI, but how is that even possible? And it's mainly because he had some lofty goals. One of those lofty goals was, you know what? I want to put my family in a position to where I can actually generate my own bank. That was his goal. That's his objective. That's the objective that he was shooting for. And he understands that, hey, I'm 68 years of age. I understand that maybe I am not a great candidate for a cash value life insurance policy to be able to leverage and generate wealth. But what is it that I can do that I can instill into my family? He's got a son and a daughter that I can instill in my family and their spouses to be able to set the generations to come up. I've got some that are that, there's a 40-year impact, and I've got some that are also that 54-year impact. Meaning, what is it that I can do now? The ideal situation would be to put together some form of a family bank to be able to support the generations to come. And so what I found interesting about that is he realized that, again, this video that we watched seemed like a distraction to me because we don't talk about solutions. Whereas, where this was a boomer that kind of jumped in and then said, you know what, I want to focus on a solution. What is an action that we can take? So if we kind of blow that up a little bit, what he's looking for, what he's wanting, is to be able to put his family in a position to where we can generate and or have a family bank.
No,
And so what does that look like? Say that again.
I got you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Okay. And so what does that look like? Well, usually when you hear the words family bank, you automatically assume what? Cash value life insurance policies, right? And that's where his mind was. Cash value life insurance policies, and specifically whole life policies, if we're talking about becoming your own bank and Nelson Nash and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of understanding, hey, what does it look like for us to get structured where we would have a family bank, obviously being funded by some number of policies. And as we identify opportunities, we leverage against that policy, take advantage of those opportunities, pay back the policies, rinse and repeat. Like, sounds pretty awesome. But I wanted to go a step further because usually this starts and stops at a cash value life insurance policy. But I started asking more questions because what I wanted to understand is, in order for you to have a policy in place and have that policy working efficiently enough for you to be able to leverage it and use to be able to take advantage of some of these opportunities, that's not a short time period. It takes time for money to compound and build inside of secure compound interest accounts for the most part. So I asked a few more questions. I wanted to dig into some more details on what is the family structure? What does that look like in his household, and how does it look as it relates to his kids' households as well? Is meaning between him and his spouse, what are those vehicles you have today that would put you in a position to be able to create and or generate and or build a family bank? What are those assets you have available to you right now? He's got a pension. He's got a first position home equity line of credit. Yeah, he's got a term policy. And if something were to happen to him, that obviously that will fund that bank. And he's in the midst of generating and or creating 4 secure compound interest accounts for his grandchildren. All right, that's a great step. But what I asked was, if we're talking about a family bank, that includes everyone, meaning we talk about the boat all the time. Who's in the boat with you? It's not just you. Who's in this boat with you? So he identified, okay, I've got my son and daughter who's somewhat on board. Well, let's talk about their assets. What do they have available? Well, I worked with his daughter already creating a self-directed 401k. She's got other previous employer plans, and she's got a current retirement account that she's funding. And in addition, when she jumped onto the channel, she realized that her IUL wasn't functioning very efficiently. So what we talked about doing is converting one of those the IUL that she has into a secure compound interest account like MPI. And then there's a son, he and his wife, they have they're entrepreneurs, they're self-employed. And so he's got a business line of credit that has some room and leverage in it. And he's got an old retirement account that's really not doing much. Again, they're both entrepreneurs, pretty successful business, but this is what leverage looks like. So there are all these vehicles that they have at their disposal. But again, if the focus is only on what is that cash value life insurance product I can put in place to be able to build my family bank, to me, that's kind of short-sighted because you're waiting. So my question was, well, What about just getting started today? Is there an opportunity to leverage some of these other vehicles to just simply get started? And again, how is that possible? If this family bank isn't only talking about a cash value life insurance based product, how do you leverage these other vehicles to then put yourself in a position to generate your own family bank? Well, we have to now define, what is a family bank? Like, what do I even mean? Like, what does that structure even mean? So that kind of moved us to the next step in this process, and that was, let's really understand what is meant by a family bank. And what does that structure look like? I'll call it at utopia, meaning when we get to the finish line, what is the true goal that we want in place to be able to support and or help generations to come? What does that look like? Well, in truth, it's not just about a family bank. Because, on this channel, we talk about structure. Structure matters. It is not just about this. It's about, how is the family bank being funded, and what does that structure, what is the process of being able to leverage the funds in it? So there are other pieces to this puzzle. It's a trust. And it's not just a trust that then feeds the family bank, because we have to have layers of security. We have to have layers of accountability. We have to have structure in place so that we can manage this process efficiently. So then the trust itself, we have to create an LLC that's owned by the trust. That LLC that's owned by the trust, that LLC has an EIN number. And the manager of that trust should be someone who's independent of the people who are, I'll call it what is it called? The co-trustees, the co-trustees of the trust and the grantors of the trust. We're talking about people outside of someone who can independently, comfortably, and confidently be okay with saying no. Because 9 times out of 10, if I had daughters, I can do this with these 4 boys with no problem with my eyes closed. But if I had daughters and she needed some type of dollar amount out of the family bank to be able to take care of an action, I don't know that I could say no. But can we, when we're developing this structure, we as the grantors and the co-trustees of this trust, put someone in a position that can actually help hold us accountable? And that's where it's managed independently. Any loans that are generated, those loan documents live in this structure, and also the governing docs that, if God forbid someone were to pass or something were to happen, all live in this structure. And then we use the EIN number of that LLC, create a checking account, and that is where the family bank lives. But still, when you think of family bank, you think of cash value life insurance policies. Is there an opportunity to start that family bank, even if that MPI plan or that IUL or even that whole life policy hasn't matured enough for it to effectively assist? What about that self-directed 401k? What is it about a self-directed 401k anyway? Well, a self-directed 401k allows you to leverage and or borrow against it for 50% of what's in it, up to $50,000. And if you and your spouse have that self-directed 401k, that's $100K. Can that $100,000 become a part of this family bank? Well, it sure can. How about a personal line of credit and or a business line of credit? Can a business line of credit or a personal line of credit be a part of this process? Absolutely. What about a first position home equity line of credit? Again, we have to peel back the layers on, what are we talking about when we talk about becoming a bank, being a family bank? What do banks do? Banks create nothing. Banks there's no, I'll call it asset that a bank creates. What they do is they receive funds and they provide a low interest rate to the people they receive those funds from. And then they distribute those funds at a higher rate, which creates an arbitrage, which creates a spread. And the banks keep that spread. Can you do that same process with leveraged money out of a 401k? You absolutely can. Can you do that same process with a PLOC, BLOC, or a first position or even a second position home equity line of credit? You absolutely can. So do we have to wait for those cash value life insurance based products to mature in order for us to create our family bank? So my point of today is, yes, this is what utopia looks like. This is what the goal may be, but we don't have to wait for the trust or wait for the LLC or wait for the properly designed family bank in order to move this process along. And so if we kind of dig a little bit deeper into that line of credit, I'm sorry, not line of credit, if we dig a little bit deeper into that family bank, what does that even mean? Well, the idea behind it is the family bank is owned or structured, or the grantors or the co-trustees of that trust. There's 4 people. And those 4 people have a maximum lifetime gift amount of about 13.6 million as of today. Well, that 13.6 million times 4 is the maximum amount that can be contributed into that family bank. But when you add the spouses, it actually, again, if each one of those 4 individual, well, I guess the spouses of the kids. So if we add the spouses of the kids as well, it's even more than that. It ends up being 6 times 13.6 million. But the bottom line is, between the 4 owners of the trust, we're talking about funding it to the max with 4 times 13.6 million. Where does it come from? Well, it can absolutely start here. And if we can just simply start this again, it's 2024. We talk about losing compound cycles. We don't have time to wait for you to pay off your home. We don't have time for you to put your kids in a position to where that MPI plan that you started at age, what is it, 14 days old, is mature enough to where we can now add it to our structure to be able to start our family bank. Is it possible to put ourselves in a position, start now, creating that structure so that we can leverage these vehicles that we do have to be able to stop being so dependent upon those institutions that all they are doing is making sure we aren't successful in the future? Stop depending so much on banks, depending so much on our employer, depending so much on life insurance companies to take care of us, because they're not. And as we dig into this structure, as we peel back the layers on getting started now, what does that look like? Again, what that means is leveraging and using this self-directed 401k to start that family bank. Is there an opportunity to use a portion of that first position HELOC or all of that first position HELOC to start that family bank? And for the couple who are entrepreneurs, getting them properly structured so this BLOC and that old 401k can be a part of this process. Meaning we do not have to wait for Nelson Nash or Curtis Ray or some other cash value life insurance based product before we can take advantage of putting our families in a position so that can be successful now. But it does take commitment. Like, these 4 individuals have to be on the same page. I struggle imagining whether or not me and my brother can get on the same page to be able to accomplish this goal. But here's the facts. We will not be successful in 2078 if we don't change the way we handle money today so that we can put these later generations in a position to be able to be successful. So even when these 4 individuals get on the same page, and that's mom, dad, and son and daughter, we still have to get the spouses on board as well. And again, this is a paradigm shift. This looks different than anything else you can go online and find, because everyone's talking about do it yourself, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. No. How about we get in the same boat? How about we join hands and we identify where the opportunities are so that we can become successful? And then when we at least just get started, again, using the assets that we have available, that line of credit, that self-directed retirement account, just using the assets we have available to us to be able to start that family bank. And as we transition, as we build more, as we grow, as we understand where the opportunities are, as we make mistakes, as we bump our head, as we realize what I thought my brother was going to do and paying that money back, he didn't, we learn and we refine the process. And then we start to build that structure. Because what is the point of having this structure? Why is it so important to have an LLC between the trust and the bank? Why is that so important? Again, it's about accountability. It's about putting a third party in play. And maybe that third party is the husband or the wife of one of the co-trustees. Like, I'm okay with that. But it needs to be someone that we empower as trustees of the trust, as grantors of the trust, someone that, and again, it could be, how about this? It could be a CPA. It could be a tax attorney. And what we're doing is we're putting that tax attorney in a position so that, again, we have granted them the power to say no. And what's required? What may be required of you? What may be required of you during this process is that if when you need to leverage or use some of the funds inside of this bank, we need to understand why. We need to make sure we need to understand why the funds are requested. Maybe you need to fill out a form that states here's why you need it. And in that form, we need to identify what the steps are, what the strategy is as to how those funds are going to be paid back. In addition, maybe one of the questions is, how do the funds that we're looking to leverage or that you are looking to leverage inside this bank, how are the funds going to benefit the trust? How are the funds going to benefit the bank? Meaning, if I need a vehicle, and traditionally I would go to the dealership, identify the vehicle, and then get financing through a traditional bank. Well, the opportunity would be, instead of me giving the bank that arbitrage or that spread, how about I purchase or get the purchase amount from our family bank? And this is the commitment that I've made to pay the family bank back. And therefore, I'm recapturing or capturing that interest that I would have been giving away. We're capturing it inside of our own bank so that we can do what? And again, what we're doing is we're learning. So instead of using the cash value life insurance policy, maybe what we're leveraging is the BLOC, the business line of credit. And I know the business line of credit might be at 7-8%, which means when I borrow these funds, maybe I'm paying a higher interest rate back to my own bank because I know how it benefits us as a whole.
Right. Right. Because otherwise you're paying somebody else that interest. At least you get to keep it this way, and you get to set the rate so that you're making money off of yourself in there and not losing the interest. Imagine the conversations and where people would be talking about velocity banking, using HELOCs to reduce your debt or paying off your home faster because you're trying to save yourself $100,000 or more in the interest. But what if that interest was just going back into your account?
That's it.
And you had a reason to charge yourself interest. Right now, if you go to your savings account and you take out $500 and you go make money on the money that you made, and you say, okay, I'm putting it back with interest, the IRS is going to say, oh, about that. About that. You can't do that. You have to pay taxes on that. You made money on that. So this is where people are really, the high yield savings account conversations, they're really cutting themselves. One, that you can't leverage that money and it may be making money. So the only way for your money to make money is if it's sitting in there collecting dust. So it's collecting a little interest, but it's also collecting dust because you can't use it. But then on top of that, if you did use it for something and then you made money on that money, you would have to pay taxes on that, and you lost money because it wasn't sitting in the account anymore, right?
Right.
So you've lost twice by just taking the money out. But nobody's talking about that because the whole point is just to keep it in there. Well, for how long? When are you going to use it? Is the 4.5 or whatever rate they set, because they get to decide what that rate is. Tomorrow it could be 1%. You're not guaranteed the rate. So just park it there while you're getting this. No, let's not educate ourselves further, because this is just what's trending. I feel good about myself and good about this decision. But you see how in the long run, this ends up, you're robbing yourself. And a lot of the people who are having these conversations, they stop there too, because they go, it's like arrival syndrome. I've made this decision. This is how I'm doing it. This is like my flavor of personal finance. So this is what I'm doing. And anybody else who's doing other things, that just happens to be their flavor. This is not, we're not talking about chicken wings. This isn't ice cream. This isn't pick your flavor. There's many ways to 10, but those variables aren't what you prefer. It's what you have, right? It's what you have to leverage and then what you can do with it. I think it's different than what I prefer, what I feel comfortable with. Do you feel comfortable with being homeless? Because you can have money in a high yield savings account, but when you have to take it out to be able to survive, Lucinda in the chat, she said, it's really hard for people to learn about this kind of stuff. People can't think about these things when they are just trying to survive. That's what she said.
Man, and I get it. And that's where I go back to, I'm not naive. Like, again, I get it. This is the overall goal. But my question to everyone is this, and I think you're covering it up. It's where to start, though. It's can we start? Can we accomplish our goal by leveraging what we have? So I get it. We are
Right.
just in survival mode, which is why I ask. I'm not saying that you have to go out and get your cash value life insurance policy and give it 10 years so that you have enough cash value to be able to make sure generations after you are successful. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, what are those vehicles right now that are currently not being leveraged the way they could to be able to start this process? Because we have to learn at some point. We are 2 generations away from generational wealth. We are all 2 generations away. So when do you start? If you don't start now, if you don't pay yourself first, then when does it begin? And again, it's identifying what are those vehicles right now you have available to you. And all we're talking about is looking at them differently, taking a different perspective so that you can take that action, knowing that once you learn how, then we can build the structure. Once you learn how, once you learn how to, I'll call it, effectively leverage your line of credit and support someone who needs it within your family, and they effectively are paying it back, and you see the fruits of that labor, now we can go back and identify or start to add the structure necessary to truly create that family bank with the ultimate goal of what? What is the goal? The goal is generational wealth. Right? The
The
goal is
goal,
being able to leverage tax-free income to create tax-free wealth. That's the goal. Go ahead, sweetheart.
yeah, the goal is to be resilient, to do more than just survive. I really appreciate this comment from Lucinda, and here's why. I grew up in a household and in a family and many people around me who were just trying to survive. They weren't having conversations about 401ks and retirement. Retirement was for fancy rich people,
Right.
and golf course and vacations and all of the things that came with that. It wasn't for people like us. They weren't even conversations that we were having. Your 401k was just something that you stashed away in case you needed to borrow it or cash it out later on. Like, at least you had that, right? That was the majority of how it was used from the people I heard talk about it. I had to cash out my 401k. It didn't matter to them. It wasn't really any love lost because they weren't imagining themselves growing this account to be something that they were going to be taking dividends or distribution from and retiring at any point. This was just like a savings account with guardrails around it, essentially, right? And it was tax deferred. So by the time they took that tax hit, it was like, yeah, oh gosh, that hurt. But also it was money that I didn't have with the playing field I was playing on before. Now I have access to this. So thank God I at least did that. How many people are out there functioning like this? So this isn't a place of judgment. This is a place of, this is how people are functioning. Most people are just trying to survive. 78% of Americans do not have a plan. They don't have a plan. This isn't a statistic I made up. This is just the world that we live in. And this is why big corporations are able to go around and sweep up all of this real estate and turn and flip them into rentals, because they understand that if you are a homeowner now and you lose your home, you're going to need some place to live. Your only option will be to become a renter somewhere. Even if you have to downsize into a 1-bedroom apartment, they will have one for you. Probably will cost you the same as your mortgage did when you let it go. But hey, they will have one for you. There will be some place that you can live that they can profit from. The conversation has to stop with, I'm just out here trying to survive. And it has to start with, what can I do different with what I'm currently working with? Are we done with this?
Yeah, the plane is absolutely landed. I think the only other slide after this is just restating the family bank,
Okay, go
the
ahead.
rinse and repeat piece. But I think this is a good place to stay as well, because again, it goes back to, it's not waiting. It's, what do you have at your disposal today to be able to generate that family bank? What do
Right.
you have at your disposal today to start learning and putting the processes in place so that we can build on those teachings and on those learnings? But we have to start somewhere, and you don't have to wait until, because again, when you hear this is a favorite term in social media land, right? Family bank. But when you hear it, 9 times out of 10, it's some life insurance guy trying to sell you life insurance. And
Yeah.
that's not the start, and that's not the end. The start and the end is, Are there vehicles that we have in play today that we can just, again, shift how we view them and leverage them differently to be able to put our families in a position so that we can learn how to manage and become a family bank and then add that structure as we go?
You know, there was a lady who was talking about trust, and I was tuning into her live stream, and maybe we'll have her on just because the conversation was so good. I loved when she said she was describing how her trust was set up, and she has young kids, and she said, now the way that my trust is set up, somebody has to take care of my kids if God forbid something were to happen to me while they're still small. Now I love my brother with all my heart, she says, but I do not want him raising my kids. Our philosophies on parenting are just too different. However, I would not want anyone else. I would not want the person raising my kids to also be in charge of my trust. If something were to happen to me, my brother is really good with money. He's just not good with parenting. And being able to respect those types of aspects and honor those strengths inside of the family, I think is really important. Maybe his feelings would be hurt that she didn't want him to raise her kids. Maybe he wouldn't care. And he would say, hey, I'm glad she dedicated somebody to this job because I wouldn't want to do it. I would much rather make sure that they got what they needed and distribute this according to what the rules of the trust are along the way. To your point, though, what is inside of there is going to be different for everybody. But if we are not taking the time to improve and educate ourselves and utilize what we currently have available to us, then we are not going to be able to go back in time by the time we do. I'm moving on from this, but there is a point that I just want to drive home, and it's for a lot of the success that we see out there could be somebody with the same degree, could be somebody with the same opportunities, right? Could be somebody who went to the same school or had the same job or makes the same amount of money, but structuring it and doing something different because they had access to information. That is literally the only difference for a lot of what separates people out there is the information. Otherwise, we are waiting for people to hand those opportunities to us or come and take our hand and pull us along. This is us. We're reaching out for your hand and we're saying, come on, let's go. Let's go and let's make this a space where we can all learn. You tell us, give us the feedback. We want to make sure that we are providing enough, with whether if it's visuals or opportunities, different days of the week, whenever it needs to be, so that we can open up these conversations so they can become discussions too. Not just watching a live stream, not just having engaging in a post or whatnot. This is not about us growing our account or talking about these topics so that we can. It's not what we're here for. We really have to start removing the taboo parts around personal finance and talking about finance with your parents, with your brother, with your sister, with your kids, right? We have to make this like this is one of the most important things because it's what helps the boat go faster. It's what powers everything. You and I were talking about that. Are we done? You have one more thing. Just can you talk about it? Then I can rant about whatever and answer some questions.
And really, I want to make sure this is clear. This is not the order. Like, it looks like there's an order here, but it isn't. Meaning, to me, you start here. Actually, even before you start here, it's identifying what's the goal. What's the goal? What's the purpose? What's the point? And pooling the right people together, meaning those who are going to be involved in this family bank, pulling them together and talking through the goal. Can we all get in the same boat? Can we all get on the same page? Once we get on the same page, then it's identifying what are the assets available to us to get this party started. Knowing that the objective is a trust, the objective is some accountability structure between the trust and the bank, but maybe we're not there yet. So it's first, what's the goal? Getting on the same page, identifying who's in the boat with us so that we can move down the path together. And then it's identifying what are the assets available so that we can start building this structure, knowing that there's a bigger picture. And I think the last piece that I wanted to mention here is I am not naive. It sounds great and wonderful that mom, dad, son, and daughter can get on the same page to identify, hey, this is the path that we want to go down. I think that sounds lovely. But when you add, another spouse from each of the brother and the sister involved, like there's a much larger, broader discussion that needs to be had. And it's not an easy discussion because we all didn't grow up the same way. So how do you get your spouse on board to be able to participate from a full family perspective on making sure that when we make a move, we're making a move as a unit, not just husband and wife, but as a family unit. Why? There's a mission here. There's an objective here. And that objective is to be able to take care of the generations to come who have no idea as to what they're headed towards. If we don't start that discussion now, I'm telling you, I don't know that there's any other option other than civil war. Like where this is a class, there's a class separation happening here. Right now, it's showing up in the comments of a TikTok video. But where does
Right.
it end? I'm
Yeah.
done.
You had, well, I thought you had another thing to show.
Oh, that's the only other thing to show. But again, we've been over this.
Oh
So
my
it's not, there's anything additional special.
Okay.
I'll call it special to identify. It's just, remember, the goal was, hey, can we identify a bank? And that bank we realized doesn't have to be a cash value life insurance policy. Maybe it's a line of credit, whether it's BLOC or PLOC. And in addition to that, some type of self-directed 401k. Are there other vehicles that we can use to be able to start and generate that family bank and still follow the same process? It's leveraging those dollar amounts in those vehicles to be able to take advantage of the non-traditional or traditional investments that we want, and then rinse and repeat. So again, we've seen it before. Just to sum it up and bring it home, it's making sure that we realize it's not this or that, it's this and that. It's not one item that's going to allow us to get there. There are many ways to 10. And is there an opportunity to leverage the assets you have to be able to accomplish that goal? Okay, you ready to rant, sweetheart? Let's rant.
Yeah, well, we have a question, so I'm going to bring that up. And thank you. If you do have questions, please put a Q in front of them. Jump in the chat. By the way, if you're watching this on the TV or your computer and you're thinking to yourself, like, I don't know how to open the chat, you can jump on with another device that might make that easier. Your phone, if you jump on with the phone, it automatically pops up with the chat while we're live. So that makes it a lot easier. We have new people who may not know the acronym.
Which one? Because you're right. I love being held in check because you're right. I go through this stuff assuming people know exactly what it is I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
please identify which one you're referencing, and I will go back. But all of them.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about
tell us the
a SKIA, right? A SKIA, secure compound interest account, which is basically a properly designed cash value life insurance product that's designed to produce income. I talk about MPI, maximum premium indexing. It's a type of SKIA that allows you to be able to produce that income. IULs, index universal life insurance policies, or whole life policies that are just simple, basic life insurance based products that if you do it right, you can leverage them and use them. But in truth, they were never designed to produce income. That doesn't make them bad. It's just you have to understand what those vehicles are that you have so that you can understand how to use them. And I talk about a self-directed 401k a lot. Self-directed 401k it's a regular 401k, but the structure of that 401k is a bit different because it allows you to be able to invest in any non-traditional investment that you would like. What are non-traditional investments? What I'm talking about there is anything outside of the stock market. So can your 401k buy land, REITs, subject twos, crypto, precious metals, you name it, your 401k can purchase it. It just, the issue is 9 times out of 10, we haven't been educated or taught on how to structure these things to be able to do so. It's kind of what I do. But the bottom line is there are vehicles that you have available to you that will allow you to be able to accomplish these goals that we've referenced and not just be upset at the fact that one generation isn't as successful as you were based off the opportunities that you had in front of you. It's how can we focus our attention and get aligned and actually realize this problem isn't us. It didn't start with us. This problem has been created, but we have to now deal with it. And how can we work together to be able to help all of our generations through this process? They will not and cannot do it on our own. The math doesn't math. They mathematically are not being set up properly to be able to handle these problems independently. So how can we focus our attention so that we can support these generations to come to be able to execute? And I think that's the moral of the story. So I don't want to repeat myself. So if I missed any other acronyms, or if there are some specific acronyms that you want me to address, be happy to do it.
Yes, thank you for that glossary of terms, Donnell. We really appreciate the impromptu index of terms could possibly have been mentioned, but you did miss the ones that she referenced.
Which
So
was?
here we go. PLOC, HELOC, and I think she meant BLOC.
Yeah, PLOC. So personal line of credit. Well, PLOC, BLOC, and HELOC are all in the same space. They are lines of credit offered to you from a bank based off your credit history, credit worthiness, DTI, all of those kinds of things. Personal lines of credit are usually those lines of credit that, you know what, maybe I don't have a home, maybe I'm a renter, but I do have great credit. 9 times out of 10, there are credit unions and banks that will provide you a line of credit based off your positive credit worthiness, and put you in a position to where you can leverage it and do other things. Now, these lines of credit, personal line of credit, business line of credit, is ultimately the same thing. You're just leveraging your business to be able to acquire it. But lines of credit in general are traditionally uh, function like credit cards. But if you get the right line of credit, they are somewhat open ended, meaning you're able to do the process of velocity banking by putting your income in and being able to pay bills from. How can a line of credit like a PLOC or a BLOC help you in the family bank discussion that we just had? Again, understanding how banks function. Banks function based off arbitrage. Arbitrage meaning, I'm not looking for you to create anything. It's using it as leverage to generate or reduce or eliminate expenses going out. So if you've got a line of credit, personal line of credit or business line of credit that may be sitting at 7-8%, but you've got a spouse or a child or a parent who is looking to make a purchase. What if they leverage that line of credit to make that purchase, and instead of paying the bank or paying whatever the institution was they were going to get that leveraged dollar amount to be able to spend, they leveraged you and then paid that difference, that arbitrage, meaning the cost of what it would have taken if they leveraged that money or borrowed that money from a bank compared to what the cost is to you. And that arbitrage, that difference, came back to your line of credit, ultimately growing that line of credit to be able to be used again. And again, in essence, putting those lines of credit in a position to become the bank for your family members, become the bank for those that are in the same boat with you, headed in the same direction. And as that matures, as that becomes bigger, as you learn what this process needs to look like, you are also acquiring other assets like cash, properly structured cash value life insurance based products, to be able to then, again, the main focus is to get to a position where you can have that or create that family bank with that structure that we mentioned. So it's leveraging or using these tools to help get us closer to that goal. So what did I miss? I think I missed home equity line of credit. So HELOC.
Nope. Oh, you're good. We'll
Nope,
just.
nope, nope.
Oh,
Home
okay.
equity line of credit ultimately just means home equity line of credit. There's two different types, right? There's a first position and a second position. Ultimately, what that means is home equity line of credit from the perspective of, hey, I've got a mortgage. Hey, I've got a home that has a mortgage on it, but between the amount that I owe on that mortgage and what the home may be worth, there's room there. And using that room, leveraging that room, leveraging that room from a bank and or credit union to be able to use that leverage to also do other things. So, all right, now I'm done, sweetheart.
Okay. I was like, okay, let's everyone thank Sequia
Exhale.
for that impromptu lesson on our glossary terms here for this channel. Really appreciate that. And also all the extras that you added in there. Loving that for us.
I got a few more if we need them.
No, we love that. It's just enough. Just enough for today. Okay. Rhino Marketeer says, should I do my trust myself? I think this is a great question.
Well, I'm all for self-education. You just don't know who to trust
Right.
out there, right? And so I think doing your homework to understand what makes the what the best path is to go down, I think that's the right thing to do. But as it relates to a trust, can you do it by yourself? You probably can. Would I do it by myself? I would not. I would want a lawyer in my state who understands the rules and the expectations within my state to be able to at least assist me in building that trust. But there's no harm, there's nothing wrong in getting educated and doing your own homework to understand what some of those rules are, so that when you do sit down with that lawyer, you're not just dependent upon what they say. So I would leverage the lawyer who understands what the laws look like in your state. But I think you getting self-educated is the right thing to do.
Man, there's a there's something about this though that does feel a little bit grim. And it's hard to have these conversations without seeming negative about these topics either. I don't know that we can positively, enthusiastically talk about why we're here in the first place without getting a little pissed off. That's first and foremost. I think if there's people who deserve to be angry, and that there should be room there so that they're not just deflecting, going, look, I can't talk about this because one, things are the way that they are, and I'm currently in the situation of dealing with them, back to Lucinda's point, right? Of just surviving, whether or not it means I'm going to YOLO and do the best that I can today and have the lifestyle that I feel I deserve. Like, why should I have to sacrifice? If I just stopped surviving and I just got into a position of thriving, what it seems like to me, what you're saying is I should put more into developing something for people I don't even know, might not even meet. And I got to live this way? Like, right. What are you saying? That does not sound like I get to finally enjoy the fruits of my labor, and I'm not with that. No, not going to do it. And I don't blame people who feel that way. The difference, though, is if you have kids. Like, that for me is the difference. I don't think that what we're saying is you have to beans and rice. This is not Dave Ramsey channel.
This is definitely not that.
We are not saying beans and rice. But what we are saying is, if you're doing this in the traditional way, if you are dependent on these traditional vehicles, then this is where you will have to budget beans and rice in order to participate. Still doesn't mean the outcome's going to be any different, but in order to participate, you have to play that game the way that it was designed, right? This is where the question, like, should I do the trust myself? I love what your answer, because I'm this way. That's why I call myself professional rabbit hole hunter. Well, I'm not the only one who called me that, but I've just kind of coined it and owned it since then, because I don't want to learn later down the road that somebody else was doing something that was wrong, because they're not tied to my outcome. They don't care. And how will I know they'll even be in the industry 10 years from now or 20 years from now for me to go back and ask them questions? It's all far too convenient for somebody else to come along and go, that's not a thing. That should not have been a thing. And you have no idea what had prompted that person to set something up in that way. It could have been where we find out with whole life insurance policies quite often, including IUL policies, that quite often they're set up in a way that benefited the agent. They got paid more. That's why they set your policy up that way. You don't know that. So then you're moving forward and you think that you can leverage this. You think that you can use this as a bank. You think you're going to do
They told me.
infinite banking, right? They said all this stuff, but it was up to them on how they got to design it, which is why I appreciate the MPI policy so much, is because you can't do that. You cannot design it any way that you want to. There is a certification and a contract you have to sign that you are going to only do it this way, and it can only be approved, and there is somebody over you to make sure that this is how it's done, and you're agreeing to that. So there's a lot of people out here who have a lot of things to say about MPI. There's a lot of people out here that have a lot of things to say about non-traditional investments, but most of the people are either programmed to believe those things about those vehicles, or they benefit far too much from people doing things in the traditional ways. We ask all the time, who benefits? If it's not you, and you don't understand how it is that you benefit, not how you might benefit, but how you actually benefit from this. Ask more questions. So should you do the trust yourself? No, I don't actually think you should do the trust yourself. I think that you should have someone that you can hold accountable if something were wrong about this, right? Like there are people in positions for a reason. Like a law firm does this for a reason. But learning what the structure is like, we are moving into that in this channel. We're moving into bringing people on to talk about that and to be able to ask questions. And we've been highly vetting people because a lot of people, a trust could be anywhere from $1,200 to $12,000 or $20,000 for the same exact thing.
Easily.
And we have just been crossing off people off of lists because we're like, why is it that much? Why are you doing the same thing? So are you doing the same thing? Is it's not the same thing? Then help us understand. And it's just that they can. Just that they can. What would that extra $15,000, $19,000 do inside of your family bank?
Right.
Like, those are the questions that we're asking because people are out here and they need help. But because you have other people who have the ability to strong arm others into these high fees for things for what they're looking to protect their family. They are looking at, I have a lifestyle, I have a legacy, I have this need for my family, so I can charge more because you see what's happening with inflation. You see what we just showed you. They're trying to hit those numbers too, and the only way that people are able to do it is if they join into these types of industries where they can earn that kind of income. Not everybody can. Wouldn't it be nice to go to work and then just decide like, oh, I'm just going to make $20,000 today? The majority of America cannot do that. But you can spend it or it can be taken from you. Like those, that's the difference, right? So we have to be able to put ourselves in and get ourselves protected. It's not just a trust though. You will never get to the trust if you don't understand how everything else needs to be structured and how to leverage it. So that, I think that's the most important part. Hope that answers your question. Okay, we have more comments.
Let's do it. I starred a couple. Hopefully that helped you.
Yeah, if you guys could star them, that does help me, but the queue helps me too. For those who are new here, I can't see very good, so that's why the queue helps me. At least I can look for that shape. Okay.
You can see just fine to me though.
Huh?
So you can see just fine to me though.
What? Was it a compliment? Thanks. Okay, moving on. We'll talk about it later. William Smith says, do married couples have separate trusts? It's great. Oh, that's a good question.
And I think I'm going to respond the same with the other. Can married couples have separate trusts? I believe they can. But when you talk about married, depending on the state that you're in, it doesn't matter what you do. The state is kind of going to dictate what you and that married couple can or will or won't split as if God forbid something were to happen. So can you be a part of different trusts? Meaning maybe you as the spouse have your own trust that you're a part of with your mother and father or grandmother, grandfather, whatever that legacy would look like. And in addition, your spouse is a part of their own. So I think that I would not be shocked to see that. So can you? Absolutely. But if you're looking to start or kind of go down the path of creating what the next generations are going to look like for your household, should you? Probably not. I think it's getting in the same boat and getting on the same page and identifying the goal. And once you've identified the goal, then it's a matter of putting the right structure in place so that we can go achieve that goal together. And I would hope that it would be together. But I wouldn't be shocked if you and your spouse were both a part of different trusts, which means you actually have separate trusts between you two. But I would think there would also be, I'll call it criteria built inside of those trusts that will allow that information to also overlap. Meaning, if I was a part of my family's trust that had some criteria around how our kids were going to be taken care of, and your trust did the same thing, again, there would have to be verbiage there that would allow the two to overlap. And now legally, what's that impact, God forbid, if something were to happen? Again, it's going to be different from state to state. So I don't know that I can speak on that piece.
And there's many ways to 10. So if you've got kids with other people, families are structured in so many different ways now that it may make sense for you to do that. In addition, you have that additional protection in the event that one of you passes and there's an asset underneath there that you need to be able to utilize when If somebody passes, for instance, if you make more income than your spouse does and you pass away and there's nothing in the trust, everything is still rolled up in the trust and unable for her or them to utilize it to supplement and for them to be okay. Like, those are the kinds of questions, and that things get real when you see somebody else go through it, but nobody's out here talking about that part, right? Even if they did have life insurance, even if they did have some provisions, no one's out here telling their business on how it actually went down. Like the conversations that they had, whether they were or were not subject to going through probate court. What does that look like? These conversations are happening. One, it's hard enough to grieve. Who the heck wants to have these conversations? Two, when people are going, hey, please let me know if there's anything that I can do. It's already too late for the majority of stuff that people could have done, right? They could have helped us get structured differently. They could have educated us and helped us understand how important this was in case this was a reality for us.
Right.
This could have been, you could have focused more on how we benefited and less on how you benefited if you really were out here trying to help people, right? That's where this could have been. We say it all the time, especially with people who are focused on reducing debt as their primary goal. You can be debt-free and broke at the same time. Those things can be true. And so therefore, focusing on reducing the debt does nothing to provide provision for those who, if something were to happen to you, they're not like, oh, thank God she paid off the student loans. We were really excited that she paid off this whole house because that we're going to have to sell it. We're going to have to sell it to pay for this funeral because she didn't have any life insurance, right? Or whatever the case is. But we see this all the time, especially on Facebook, like prayers, send the prayers. What are we praying for? People don't want to say because just a second ago you were living life. You and your friends were on a trip. You had posted all this stuff, and then now you don't want to say, I didn't have all of my I's dotted and T's crossed. But we're out here living like this because it's justified, right? It's justified to be like this. But who else is seeing it be justified like this? Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're also watching. An entire generation, two generations of people who are becoming of age, adulting, and then saying, I always wanted to have, right? These are my goals. It's not, I always wanted to have financial security. It's like, I always wanted to have a pool. I always wanted to have dark cabinets, like whatever it is for your generation. And like, I always wanted to have leather furniture, like whatever the things were, right? We all have those things that we had in our minds as the goals, but for the majority of us, it wasn't. I want to make sure I'm financially secure first. Like I
want
have
to
my
make sure that the people who aren't here are financially secure first, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to say this too, William, because I love to think that everybody who's watching has a supportive spouse. We would love to believe that everyone's going to go, hey, brother, hey, sister, like, let's all get mom and everybody together and let's have this conversation around the family bank because I'm fired up. I'm ready to do this. And then they have to sit there. We actually had this conversation and it did not go very well, actually. It went, there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of people who were so heavily programmed, and their relationship with money in general made them feel like, what if somebody tries to get over on me in this situation? And that's where the conversation shifted. And we were sitting there looking at each other like, they're so focused on what if somebody does not act in integrity. They were fighting about this. We didn't invite somebody to this conversation because we felt like they weren't in a position to have this conversation. And we just felt like any questions or any ways that they felt about it didn't matter at that stage of the game. But suddenly that became a thing, right? Like, why didn't we invite this person or not, or could have, like, how do we know? And what we realized was we don't qualify for that type of family bank. We would love to. We have been able to utilize it here and there to be able to use leverage where we could. And we've shared that before, like when my mom had sold her house and she went and rented for a while until she could find a house. And so where did her money go? It was just going to either sit in a bank where it was subject or kind of vulnerable for her to just chip away at it and spend it, right? Or she could come and put it on our HELOC until she found a place to live. And that was good for us, right? Because we got to have, we had less in interest during that period of time. But it would have just sat in the bank. So we got to pay her more interest and it was protected. So that was a good thing. Good for everybody, actually. But not everybody is going to be able to have this conversation or have it be well received or even feel like it's worth it to go down this road to have this conversation. Like if your relationship with people, or you know that their relationship with money and the decisions that they make would put you in a situation where you would be vulnerable and you would be in a position to lose everything you've worked for, then it may be that you have to make your own bank. And it's possible. You don't need other people. You can make your bank. You, your kids, your legacy, your bank. It can be just like that too. So I just wanted to say that because not everybody is there. So William, to your point, not everybody who's married is in the same situation or on the same page
Right.
with when it comes to money. The emotional part and how you feel like the relationship that you have with money or somebody else around you matters so much. It's the number one reason why people get divorced. And that's sad. But it's true. Even you and I, when we were started to go through like this therapeutic process around our relationship with money, and we started to peel back even where we were first influenced about money. So what songs did we listen to? What were those mantras that we
What
just kind of,
cartoons did we watch?
right? Like what were all the things that influenced how we thought about money? For me, I was such a free bird when we met, and I was like, I don't watch the news. Why would I do that? That is going to kill my all the joy for the day. Why would I
Credit? What's
even watch?
credit? I don't need credit. Who needs credit?
I was like, just use the cash. Like, you don't need any of that stuff. And I was like, look, you're making life too hard. It could just be so easy. And the longer we were together, I was like, well, it's kind of cool that you have just like, you could just use credit then, right? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, well, that was really helpful that you could do that. I get that part, but I'm afraid to use those kinds of tools. And the reason why I was afraid was because my relationship with those types of tools, right? There's a whole
Conditioning.
conditioning behind that, right? So a lot of other people are like that too. So in the case of like where we were polar opposites when it came to mentalities and mindsets around that. Would you say us having separate trusts would have been a good thing?
No, I can't. I get the value of, because of the difference in I'll call it relationship with money and how it be used and structure. I understand at the root I mean at the core, at the surface rather, at the surface that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think what it would be on me to do is to make sure we can peel back the layers, because we have to get in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot split this boat in half and go in any positive direction. We have to get in the same boat and we have to row in the same direction, however long that takes. Whatever
Well,
the process is,
what if I said no?
then we would just be talking more. I can't accept no. I can't accept this is not okay. Why? Because this is not about you and I. This is not about this generation. It's about that generation we can't see.
You might have broken up there for a moment, but this is not about you and I. This is bigger than you and I.
Right.
For a lot of people, these are the conversations and the questions that need to be asked before you get married to somebody, right? So, but fair enough. A lot of people don't, and so therefore you're just stuck in this situation. You look frozen to me. I just want to make sure you're not for everybody else. I think we're good. You just look frozen to me. Okay. So, would you have separate trusts? I think that's the whole point of a trust, is even if you have somebody up underneath your trust who might make different decisions than what your wishes were, that's kind of the point, is that they can't make decisions outside of what was established inside the trust. So there are those bumpers for a reason. Let's go on to Shay Shay. Hi, by the way. If I wanted for my family to meet with you, do I prepare them for that meeting? I have a second position HELOC. My children are 2 young adults and a teenager. How do they do it, Donnell?
Well, it all starts with what's the goal. Just meeting is one thing, but kind of laying out, hey, here's the purpose of that conversation, and maybe that perfect purpose looks more like education. And we can just start there. It's like, hey, we don't have really clarity on what the ultimate goal is initially. It just may be, hey, there's some vehicles, there's some opportunities available that we just want to do a better job of identifying what that looks like, how to leverage them, what to use them for, where is money going today, what are those actions currently being taken today, and kind of hone in on, hey, maybe identifying what the goal is during that discussion. So I think there's many ways of doing it. But the easy way to go about it is just jump on my calendar and let's have that discussion. Maybe the conversation starts first with just you and I. And then once that conversation happens with you and I, then we can introduce and bring in the family once we have a better understanding of what the point, what the purpose, what the goal might be. But it also could start with maybe you want to have a separate discussion with the family to just understand what is everyone's goal. Where are we headed? And what are some of those things we need to do to get better in alignment? And then when the time presents itself, we simply just jump on the calendar, do a family Zoom, and we have that discussion. Regardless of kind of where that discussion goes, we allow it to go to where it's meant to. And ultimately, it's just one step, one stage, one piece in helping you hit that ultimate objective, which would be generational wealth, I would assume.
Can you do me a favor and just log out of the vibe board? Maybe that will help because you're like behind on the stream, your mouth and stuff. Is that how it is for you guys? Because I tried to listen through my phone just to make sure. I guess it has to upload still, right? Is it at 100?
Yeah. You sure you want me to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, we'll just move on. I'm so glad that you brought up the boat, though, because this has been a mantra, an anthem. And even if you don't get it right the first time, doesn't matter. You just continue to use it as a powerful visual to propel you forward towards the goal. First, you got to know where you're going, right? And that's what we were talking about tonight. What's the goal? What's the purpose of using these tools? What is the point of learning this stuff in the first place? For a lot of people, because they don't know what the goal is, they don't understand why this is important, they won't ever make it important, right, to learn. And that's with a lot of things, right? Like, why would we learn about anything if we didn't understand why it was important, especially if we're not into it? So that's one. Two is, who is in the boat with you and who are you putting in the boat? If you are having kids, you are putting people in your boat. Like, some people choose not to each his own, right? But who is in the boat with you matters. One is, who are you allowing to be in your boat? Who should get out? Like, managing who's in there. And here's why. We talk about this story, we give away these boats, but the reason why is because it helps to really understand if you're headed in one direction and everybody in your boat is rowing in a different direction, or they're standing up and they're rocking the boat and they're making it very difficult for you to go somewhere, and in your mind you're saying, like, either they have to be in here, I'm just going to try harder to get us to our goal. They don't care about getting to the goal. We have to get everybody on the same page, not just everybody in the same boat, everybody on the same page so that they understand the impact that they have to achieving that goal, right? We shared this concept, and in just a second, let me put this up. We're about to give away the boat. Now I gotta find the boat one. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're going to give away the boat. You know, if you've been here before and you've gotten a boat, but you're still here, you can get another one and give it to somebody. But we love it when people do that, because now you're not just gifting something that you want on a live stream. You're gifting an entire sentiment, a mindset, right? An anthem. You're gifting them the power of a powerful concept and inviting them in. Sometimes this has been pretty helpful for people who have not been willing to be warm to this conversation. When they get this tiny little boat, where is it? Here we go. They get this tiny little boat and they go, what the heck is this thing? And then they learn about this story and something changes. So I don't think we can watch this story enough. It definitely motivates me and inspires me every time I see it, and I hope it does the same for you. Hold on just a second. In 1998, a British rowing team dreaming of the Olympic gold found themselves ranked 7th. Their focus had always been on the competition day, but they realized the keys to reaching their highest potential were hiding in the decisions that they'd make over those next 2 years.
Faced with two obvious choices, continue their current path and expect the same result, or give up, they discovered a third transformative option. They united under one guiding question: will it make the boat go faster? Every decision, every action was weighed against this mantra. If the answer was yes, they could, but would have to do it.
If the answer was no, it was forbidden, non-negotiable. Prior to the competition, this team was doubted and ridiculed, but no one knew what they had been doing. And once they hit the water, they were nearly unrecognizable, achieved their pinnacle, and won the gold. So we ask you,
What is your goal? What are you willing to do to achieve it?
will your story feel unrecognizable, even to you? Are you willing to light your beacon and stay focused, stay committed? Is your story non-negotiable, or are you waiting to find out how you ranked? Your financial future is not a game. You are only competing with yourself and those in the boat with you, your family and the many generations to come.
Will this make the boat go faster? A sounding alarm, a beacon of clarity amidst turbulent life decisions.
It's not just about speed, but direction, purpose, and an unwavering commitment. Every choice, every sacrifice aimed at the goal.
The first agreement this team made was to become fully self-directed, making their health their wealth, adopting a new perspective on their time and freedom, and the decisions they could fully control to reach their goal.
Will we make your boat go faster? That is our pledge to you. Our mission is to arm you with knowledge, strategies, and insights to ensure that not only you reach the goal, but you do so long before your race is over. Okay, here we go. If you haven't put hashtag boat in the chat, now's your time to do that. But we already have some people in here, so let's spin and let's get some winners. Let's see who's gonna win. And if you have a boat, let us know. I've been a winner. I'm using my boat. We love to know how you're using them too. Hey, Lucinda! Congratulations. Let's get that. Lucinda, now that you've won the boat, you got to go here to selfdirected.info/live. At the bottom, there is a winner button, or you can go selfdirected.info/winner, take you right there. You fill out the form, tell us where to send your boat, and we will get it in the mail to you. All right, congratulations. Let's spin again. We are just going to keep spinning until we get at least a few winners. And while we're here, let's see who else. Hey! Loving this today. Lucinda. I'm writing the names down so that I can remember when I see your name come in. Make sure you fill out the form, but we don't know how to send it to you. Are you frozen?
No?
No, okay. Who else is gonna win?
Yes!
Why are you in there putting hashtag boat? You shouldn't be in there. Now we got to spin again. If it picks somebody else that are the same person, you know what we got to do.
I'm good at what I do. Frozen or not.
All right. We can't wait till the end of the song now. Nope. All right, here we go. Gonna change it up. Scott was like, yes, please. One for me and everybody in my family. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, if you didn't win a boat, come back. Come back on Sunday, because that's when we'll be here again. Sunday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
All the standard times.
And 9 Eastern Standard Times, all the standard times between there. You figure out which one applies to you. Here's why this is so hard for us. We're in Arizona. We don't change time. We don't change time, but we do change time because we change from being Pacific to Mountain, then back again. Who else is doing this? Why are we still doing this? But it makes it difficult for us because in order to keep up with everybody else, we got to do things at different times now, which shouldn't be the case because it should be the same time if our clocks were different, right? We won't get into all that. We're not going to get
Let's get out of here.
All right. Thank you. Congratulations to everybody. Yes, please come back and get a boat. Crafts Bayou's like, look, I'm coming back to get a boat, and I hope you do because we want everybody to have a boat. Please come back and get a boat. Please come back on Sunday and tell a friend to tell a friend because we're over here just trying to share the good word. Are you there? Are you just freezing? I feel like I just see you freezing the whole time.
No, I'm not sure. I think it's a bandwidth challenge, so I think we just need to kind of wrap this puppy up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're making sure I have all of the questions answered for sure.
Yeah, I was looking. Yeah.
Okay, good. Roland had a question about, is there a template for this conversation? Is there a template for the conversation to have with your family? Actually, Roland, if you look inside of our videos or our live streams, you'll see one that has like gravy being poured. Thanksgiving, we went over this, like how to have this conversation with your family, because we felt like since you're going to spend a lot of time with your family, holidays, this would be a good time since everybody's together. So we went through some tips on how to have this conversation. It's called Pass the Gravy. That's the thumbnail that you're going to be looking for. And whether or not that's going to be successful in your family or not, give us that feedback. What do you think? Maybe we need to come up with some new framework on how to have or not have, how to exit that conversation quickly if it's not going right. Okay. Okay. Well, I love that. And we appreciate you guys being here. I'm trying to read through the comments, but there's a lot coming in right now. She said in the meantime, she's putting a boat on her husband's screensaver.
That's what's up.
There it is. Okay. We know that time is the most valuable asset that we have. We talk about that all the time, and we appreciate that you are spending your time here with us. We like to end with, if you didn't come from a wealthy family,
you can make sure a wealthy family comes from you.
So stay tuned.
Stay protected.
Stay focused.
Stay connected.
My name's Angelique.
And I'm Donnell.
And our goal is to help you
get self-directed.
And to do that, we have a ton of free resources. So please do not sleep on those. And we will see you back here on Sunday. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time. Hey, before you go, we want to remind you that becoming fully self-directed means gaining complete control over your wealth, time, and freedom. It's not just an idea. It's a framework, a mindset, and the power to make informed decisions to secure your future. Being here means you're taking those steps, and we want to thank you for allowing us to guide you. We believe that we grow farther and faster when we grow together. So tune in next time and tell a friend to tell a friend. We've helped thousands of people just like you start their journey to financial freedom. And if they can do it, you can too. And if you're ready to learn more, we got you. Get a head start by grabbing these 2 free books. But how do they get them, Donnell?
Head over to my website where you'll have access to a few things. A ton of free resources, case studies, and over 100 5-star reviews from people just like you. And in 15 minutes, we can explore what's possible for you. So don't wait.
Invest in what you want, when you want.
But first, let us help you get self-directed.